Henry David Thoreau believed that simplicity isn't deprivation, but clarity. For him, living simply was the natural state of human beings. It's in this state that we can see clearly who we are, where we came from, and where we're going. When you remove the excess, life becomes transparent. Thoreau compared this to a mathematician solving an equation. The more you simplify, the closer you get to the essential truth. But we live the opposite of this. We live in an age where complicating things has become the rule, where accumulating has become an automatic habit. The entire culture convinces us that we need more to be complete. And in the midst of all this excess that we carry without questioning, we lose the ability to see the obvious, that maybe it was never about having more, but about needing less. Thoreau was an American writer who in the 19th century decided to spend 2 years living alone in a simple cabin near a lake. Away from the city, from social conventions, from consumption. He did this not to escape from life, but to understand what really matters when you remove all the noise. And what he discovered changed the way many people think about what it means to live well. And here's the truth. Accumulation rarely comes from real need. It comes from fear. Fear of lacking. Fear of losing. Fear of being left behind while everyone else moves forward with their full, complete, accomplished, perfect lives on social media. We accumulate because we're afraid of emptiness, because we're afraid of silence, because we're afraid to stop and discover that maybe we don't need that much. That maybe we've spent years building a life that isn't ours, chasing goals that don't belong to us, trying to impress people we don't even really know. And so, we fill the house with objects. We fill the schedule with commitments. We fill the mind with worries. And we call this security. We call this responsibility. We call this adult life. But Thoreau knew that this kind of security is a voluntary prison, a jail that we build brick by brick, purchase by purchase, yes by yes. We build the bars with our own hands and then complain that we can't get out, that we have no choice, that this is how life works. But is it really? Or are we just afraid to discover that it could be different, that it always could have been different, and that all this time we were free, but we preferred to stay imprisoned because the prison at least was familiar, predictable, safe? Think with me for a second. How many times have you bought something, not because you needed it, but because you imagined a future version of yourself who would use it? How many times have you kept old things, broken things, outdated things? Because one day it might be useful, but that day never comes, and you keep carrying the weight, reorganizing drawers, moving boxes around, storing them in units you pay for so you don't have to look at the excess. How many times have you said yes to commitments, invitations, projects, responsibilities that you didn't want to take on, just because you were afraid to say no, afraid of disappointing someone, afraid of seeming insufficient, lazy, selfish? And so, the accumulation isn't just of physical objects we can touch and see. It's of invisible obligations, of expectations that nobody asked for but we carry anyway, of masks we wear every day to please people who maybe don't even care that much about who we really are. And in the midst of all this weight, all this performance, we lose ourselves. We become administrators of our own mess, crisis managers of crises we created ourselves. Our life stops being ours and becomes a giant storage unit of things we think we should want, that we should care for, that we should value, but that deep down only drain our energy, our time, our capacity to be present in the only moment that really exists, now. Thoreau wrote one of the most disturbing and true phrases about the human condition. Most men live lives of quiet desperation, and he wasn't talking about material poverty. He wasn't talking about people who go hungry or who don't have a place to live. He was talking about people who apparently have everything. People who achieved what society calls success. People who should be happy, but who wake up every day with an emptiness they can't explain, a discomfort they can't name, a feeling that something is wrong even when everything seems right. He was talking about people who have a full house but feel empty inside. People who work 40, 50 years of their lives to buy things they don't need, to impress people they don't know, to sustain an image They don't even know anymore if it's theirs or if it's just another fantasy built by social pressure, by constant comparison, by advertising that teaches you from an early age that you're never enough the way you are. Thoreau saw accumulation as an automatic response to inner insecurity. As a conditioned reflex, we don't even question anymore because everyone does the same thing. You don't know who you really are, so you try to be someone through what you own, through what you show, through what you achieve. You don't know what you want, so you want everything others want. You don't know where you're going, so you accumulate guarantees, plan Bs, safety nets that will never really hold you. Because the insecurity isn't out there in the world, it's in here inside you. And no amount of things, no achievement, no external recognition is going to fill that void as long as you don't look inside and face what's really happening. But here's the part nobody likes to hear. The part that's uncomfortable because it hits too close to home. Accumulation also works as emotional anesthesia, as a socially accepted drug that keeps you functioning but doesn't let you truly feel. When we keep our lives full, busy, packed with tasks, commitments, distractions, we don't have to stop to feel what's really happening inside us. We don't have to face the loneliness that chases us even when we're surrounded by people. The frustration of living a life that doesn't satisfy us. The fear of growing old and realizing we wasted precious time on things that didn't matter. The deep sadness we've been pushing under the rug for so many years we don't even remember when it started. New objects, important commitments, constant notifications, series to binge, purchases to make, goals to achieve. Anything that occupies mental and emotional space serves as an anesthetic. The excess keeps us anesthetized, sleeping awake, living on autopilot, and we prefer this. Deep down, we prefer the dull and constant pain of living a life that isn't ours over the acute and true pain of facing who we really are when we take off all the masks, all the performances, all the distractions. And it's just us with ourselves, with nothing to hide behind, with nothing to protect us from the truth we've been avoiding looking at. Thoreau understood this better than anyone. He knew that the more things you have, the more commitments you take on, the more noise you create around you, the less space remains for silence. And it's in silence that you truly find yourself. It's in emptiness that you discover what really matters, what moves you, what makes you feel alive when nobody's watching, when there's no camera, when there's no audience, when it's just you with yourself. But we're terrified of emptiness. We've been trained, conditioned, programmed from a very young age to believe that emptiness is bad, that emptiness is failure, that emptiness is a sign that you're not enjoying life, that you're not productive, that you're wasting time, that you should be doing something, anything, except sitting still facing the silence. So we fill every second of our day. We accumulate activities, responsibilities, entertainment. We transform our life into an endless list of things to do, places to go, people to impress, goals to achieve. And in the midst of all this deafening noise, all this running without a destination, we forget to ask the only question that really matters. Why? Why am I doing this? For whom am I doing this? Does this really matter to me, or is it just another way of running from what I should be facing? Where is my life in the midst of all this that I call life? The inconvenient truth, the truth that hurts but needs to be told, is that many people spend their entire lives defining themselves by what they own. You stop being yourself and become your profession. You become your position. You become your car. You become your house. You become your public achievements. You become your social media profile, where you only show the good side, only the pretty side, only what deserves likes. Having replaces being in such a gradual way, so subtle that you don't even notice when it happened. And this isn't an accident. This isn't a coincidence. This is very well-planned social construction. You grow up in a capitalist society that teaches you from the first commercial you watch, from the first toy you want but can't have, that you are what you consume, that you're worth what you accumulate, that your identity is completely tied to what you show others, to what you can display, to what you achieve publicly. And so you spend decades of your life trying to sustain an image that will never be enough. Because there will always be someone with more money. There will always be someone with more achievements. There will always be someone better positioned, more attractive, more successful, more admired. There will always be a new goal to reach, a new standard to meet, a new requirement to fulfill. Accumulation becomes a desperate attempt, almost pathetic, to sustain a fragile and fabricated identity in the face of the constant comparison that social media has turned into a collective sport. You buy things not because you really want them, not because you need them, but because you think you should want them, because everyone is buying, because you saw someone with that and felt envy, because you don't want to fall behind in the invisible race that nobody can win, but everyone keeps running. And here's the central paradox that Thoreau perceived with an almost painful clarity. The more you have, the more you are possessed. You walk into the store thinking you're buying freedom, that you're buying comfort, that you're buying security. But what you're really buying is more chains. You think you're accumulating security, but you're actually accumulating obligations, responsibilities, worries you didn't even know you'd have. Each thing you buy is one more thing to take care of, to clean, to fix when it breaks, to protect from thieves, to worry about when you leave home, to include in insurance, to replace when it gets old or goes out of style. Each commitment you accept without thinking properly is one more piece of your vital energy that goes away, one more piece of your time that never comes back. Each expectation you try to meet to please someone, to be accepted, to not disappoint, is one more invisible weight you carry on your back without even realizing how heavy it is, how tired you are, how much your life has become an exhausting marathon with no finish line. You don't own the things you possess. You're their administrator. You're the caretaker. You're the slave who takes care of your own belongings, your time, your attention, your mental peace. Your entire life starts to serve the maintenance of the excess you created yourself. And you call this success. You call this fulfillment. You call this living well. But Thoreau, back in the 19th century, without internet, without social media, without anything we have today, already called this by its true name: silent servitude. You became a slave to what you once thought would free you. Think about the absurd amount of energy you spend every day, every week, every month, just to keep everything running, just to keep up appearances, just to keep the machine turning, paying bills for things you bought on impulse, organizing closets full of clothes you haven't worn in years but can't donate, because what if I need them one day? Solving problems you created yourself when you said yes to things you wanted to say no to, managing obligations that drain your soul, but you think you can't abandon because what will people think? Cleaning, tidying, categorizing, reorganizing the same space multiple times because you have too many things and too little space. And instead of having fewer things, you prefer to buy more space, rent storage units, build bigger closets. How much time do you really have left to actually live when you subtract all of this? How much mental space is left to think, to create, to dream, to be present with those you love? How much of your life is actually available to you? Or is it all occupied maintaining a lifestyle that in theory should make you happy, but in practice only leaves you tired, anxious, always running, always late, always owing something to someone? Does the life you built give you freedom? Or does it trap you more and more? And if you stop right now, take a deep breath, and answer this question with total honesty, without deceiving yourself, without ready-made justifications, you'll realize that many things you accumulate don't serve you anymore. Maybe they never really served you, but you hold on because letting go seems wrong, seems wasteful, seems like failure, seems like you're giving up on the person you should be, when in reality, letting go is the bravest thing you can do. Letting go is saying, I don't need this to be who I am. I don't need to prove anything to anyone. I can live with less and finally be more. Thoreau wasn't preaching material poverty. He wasn't saying you should live in misery, that you should go through unnecessary privations, that being poor is virtuous in itself. No, he was preaching clarity, He was preaching awareness. He was saying, look at your life with honest eyes and ask yourself what really matters to you. And everything that doesn't matter, everything that only takes up space and drains energy, everything you carry out of social obligation or fear of others' judgment, let it go. Leave it behind. Release it. But we don't do this, do we? We always live in preparation for a life that never comes. One day I'll wear this outfit. One day I'll read this book. One day I'll need this tool. One day I'll start that project that's stored in the drawer. One day I'll have time for this. And while you wait for this mythical day that only exists in your imagination, your real life is passing by, trying to get your attention, begging you to wake up and realize that the only day that exists is today. You postpone the essential life, the life that's really worth living, because you're too busy taking care of the excess, managing commitments that don't feed you, maintaining relationships that exhaust you, chasing goals that aren't yours. You postpone your real dreams because you're too busy paying installments on things you bought to feel better, but that only made you work more, earn more to spend more, enter an infinite cycle of production and consumption that doesn't lead anywhere. You postpone your presence, your ability to be here now, because you're too busy planning an uncertain future, preparing for scenarios that may never happen, building houses of cards that any little breeze knocks down. Accumulation pushes life into the future and weakens the now. Existence becomes an eternal and anguishing wait for something you already have access to at this exact moment. But you can't see it because your head is full, your heart is closed, your schedule is packed, your eyes are fixed on the phone screen, always somewhere else, always thinking about the next step, never here, never now, never truly present. And you know what's saddest, most frustrating, most disillusioning about this whole story? The unfulfilled promise of material comfort. You spend years, even decades, believing that if you have more things, you'll feel more secure. You believe that if you achieve more, you'll feel more complete, more fulfilled, more at peace with yourself. You believe that the next level of comfort, the next promotion, the next car, the next bigger house, the next more expensive vacation will finally give you the inner peace you've been seeking for so long. But it doesn't, does it? It never does, because peace doesn't come from outside. Security doesn't come from outside. Meaning, purpose, the feeling of being complete, none of this comes from outside. All of this is already here inside you, waiting patiently for you to stop running, stop distracting yourself, stop accumulating external compensations for internal voids. But you don't stop. You keep accumulating, keep buying, keep running frantically after the next thing that promises to make you feel better, make you feel sufficient, make you feel you finally arrived where you should arrive. And along the way of this endless search, you accumulate anxiety because it's never enough. You accumulate comparison because there's always someone at a higher level. You accumulate physical and emotional exhaustion because you work too much to pay for all of this. You accumulate frustration because deep down, you know this isn't taking you where you want to go, but you don't know how to get out. You don't know how to stop. You don't know how to be different. The material comfort they promised you rarely delivers the emotional and spiritual meaning you expected. Most of the time, it only delivers more noise, more distraction, more reasons for you to keep running from yourself, more excuses to postpone the inevitable meeting with who you really are when you remove all the fabricated layers. Thoreau realized this when he decided to go to Walden. He realized that excess wasn't just material. It wasn't just about having too many physical things taking up space. The excess was mental, it was emotional, it was spiritual. It was a way of living that kept people constantly busy, but rarely present. Constantly doing, but rarely being. He realized we accumulate because we can't stand silence. Because silence is frightening. When you're truly alone, with nothing to do, nothing to look at, nothing to consume, nothing to distract you from your own existence, you eventually find yourself. And this encounter can be terrifying. Because maybe you'll discover you don't like what you find. Maybe you'll discover that you spent so much time building an acceptable version of yourself, a version that pleases your parents, that impresses colleagues, that fits social standards, that you completely forgot who you really are underneath all these fabricated layers. Maybe you'll discover that underneath all the masks you wear so well, underneath all the performances you repeat on autopilot, underneath all the excess you use as a shield, there's a huge emptiness you don't know how to fill. A deep loneliness no party will solve. An existential anguish no purchase will calm. And so you run back to the noise, you run back to accumulation, you run back to anything that keeps you busy, distracted, anesthetized. Because it's infinitely easier to live anesthetized than to live awake. It's easier to live distracted than to live present. It's easier to accumulate things than to face emptiness. It's easier to have a packed schedule than to have time to think about what you're really doing with your life. The silence that excess desperately tries to hide is the silence of the encounter with yourself. And this encounter is deeply uncomfortable. It's painful sometimes, because it forces you to look at your choices without filter, at your fears without excuses, at your contradictions without ready-made justifications. It forces you to admit truths you've been avoiding for years, maybe decades. It forces you to admit that maybe you're not living the life you really want, but the life you think you should want, the life they sold you as ideal, the life everyone expects from you. It forces you to confront the uncomfortable yet liberating fact that you might be wasting precious, irreversible time on things that don't really matter, with people who don't see you beyond the surface, with goals that were placed in you, but were never really yours. And this hurts. It hurts a lot, much more than continuing to accumulate, continuing to run, continuing anesthetized, continuing on autopilot, doing what everyone does. But it's a necessary and transformative pain. It's the pain of awakening. It's the pain of realizing you can choose differently, that you always could choose differently, but nobody told you that. Nobody gave you permission. Nobody showed you there's another path besides the standard path everyone follows without questioning. Only nobody taught you that you can stop at any moment, that you can take a deep breath, that you can let go of what doesn't serve anymore even if everyone thinks it's strange, and that you can start over with fewer things, but with more clarity, with less noise, but with more truth, with less performance, but with more authenticity. But here's the huge care that needs to be taken, the crucial distinction that many people confuse. Simplicity isn't Instagram aesthetic. Simplicity isn't a passing trend. Simplicity isn't about having a minimalist house with white walls, with 3 perfectly positioned objects, with everything empty and geometric and Instagrammable. That's just another form of empty performance. It's another form of accumulation disguised as detachment. Another way for you to feel spiritually superior while you're still playing the same game of comparison and external validation. Thoreau wasn't defending a minimalist appearance. He didn't care at all about aesthetics or what others would think of his house. He was defending mental and emotional clarity. He was saying something much deeper and more transformative. Reduce what drains your life, what sucks your energy, what prevents you from being who you really are when nobody's watching. Reduce what distances you from what really matters to you specifically, not to others, not to social media, not to society. And what drains, what prevents, what distances is completely different for each person, because everyone has their own journey, their own wounds, their own true needs. For some, the excess is in the material objects that fill every space in the house. For others, it's in the excess of social commitments that drain emotional energy. For others still, it's in the excess of impossible expectations they've been carrying since childhood. Simplicity isn't a ready-made formula that works the same for everyone. It's a deeply personal and conscious choice to live with what makes sense to you, not for others who will judge from outside without knowing your story. And this is extremely important because minimalism became a marketing trend. It became another product to sell, another lifestyle for you to ironically consume. It became another way for you to feel morally superior, more spiritually enlightened, more philosophically conscious than the people around you who are still trapped in materialism. But minimalism used this way has absolutely nothing to do with inner freedom or genuine virtue. There's no automatic merit whatsoever in having little if you didn't choose this consciously. If you're doing this just because it became trendy, just because everyone's doing it, just because you want to post photos of your empty house and get likes from people you don't even know, there's no freedom whatsoever, none at all, in living with the minimum if you're doing it out of external obligation, out of lack of real choice, out of financial scarcity that prevents you from having what you'd like. Thoreau didn't defend forced poverty or privation as virtue. He defended something much more radical and transformative, genuine inner freedom. And inner freedom means you can have a lot, or you can have little. You can be rich, or you can be simple. But what you have or don't have doesn't define you as a person, doesn't control you emotionally, doesn't imprison you mentally. You consciously choose what enters your life. You choose what stays. You choose what goes when it no longer serves you. And this choice is made based on what makes you feel truly alive, present, whole, not on what makes you look good in others' eyes, not on what gets you social approval, not on what makes you feel superior in a comparison game that never ends. Minimalism only makes sense, only has real transformative value when it comes from conscious and mature choice, not from scarcity or trend. When you give up something because you realize with clarity that it no longer serves you, it's not aligned with who you want to be. It doesn't contribute to the life you want to live. Not because someone told you you should give it up. Not because you read in a self-help book that having less is being more. When you simplify your life because you genuinely want more mental space for what really matters, more time for the people you love, more energy for projects that make you feel alive. Not because you want to impress anyone with how detached and evolved you've become. The simple life Thoreau lived at Walden wasn't about having little for the moral value of having little. It was about having exactly enough. It was about knowing precisely what is enough specifically for you, for your life, for your values, for what makes you feel complete. And this is radically, fundamentally different from what the capitalist consumer society teaches you from the moment you're born. Society teaches you it's never enough, that you always need the newest model, the most updated version, the next level of status, that you always need more money, more recognition, more achievements, more validation, that the next level is where happiness is finally waiting for you. But Thoreau, with all his simple and profound wisdom, tells you something completely opposite. Happiness is already here, now, in this moment. You just can't see it, you just can't feel it, because you're too busy accumulating external compensations, running after empty promises, proving your worth to people who don't really care, performing a fabricated version of success that has nothing to do with who you really are when you're alone in the dark. And here's the twist that many people don't understand. Wealth isn't the enemy. Having money isn't bad. Having things isn't bad. The problem isn't in the having. The problem is in being possessed. You can be rich and free. You can have a lot and be light. You can accumulate achievements without becoming their slave. What defines whether something frees you or traps you isn't the quantity. It's the relationship. It's the level of attachment. It's how much you depend on it to feel whole. If you can lose everything tomorrow and still know who you are, then you're free. If you need it to feel secure, validated, important, then you're a prisoner. And the prison isn't in the things, it's in your mind. Thoreau understood that servitude isn't about how much you have, but about how much what you have possesses you. He saw rich people living miserable lives because they were slaves to their own possessions. He saw simple people living full lives because they didn't depend on anything external to feel complete. The question was never, how much do you have? The question was always, how much does this trap you? How much of your energy, your time, your attention is being drained to maintain, protect, sustain things you maybe don't even want anymore? And if the answer is a lot, then maybe it's time to rethink. Not because having is wrong, but because living trapped is sad. Because wasting your life taking care of things that don't make you feel alive is a silent tragedy. Making an analogy with music, Imagine your life is a song. Each thing you own, each commitment you take on, each expectation you carry is a note in this song. When you have few notes, well chosen, played at the right moment, the music is beautiful. It breathes. It has space. It has silence between the notes. And it's in this silence that beauty happens. But when you start adding too many notes, the music becomes noise. It loses meaning. It loses beauty. Not because the notes are bad, but because there's no more space for them to breathe. Your life is the same thing. The more you accumulate, the more noise you create. And in the midst of all this noise, you lose the ability to hear what really matters. You lose the ability to feel your own life. Thoreau wasn't asking you to abandon everything and go live in a cabin. He was asking you to stop and ask yourself, is this life I'm living mine? Are these goals I'm pursuing mine? Or were they placed in me? Do these things I accumulate make me happy? Or do they just keep me busy? And if the answer bothers you, if the answer makes you realize you're living on automatic, following a script that was never yours, then you have a choice. You can continue, can keep going, accumulating, running, fleeing, or you can stop, can breathe, can let go of what doesn't serve anymore, can start building a life that makes sense to you, not to others. And this isn't easy. This is never easy, because it means going against everything they taught you, everything they expect from you, everything you learn to believe defines success. But the truth is, you don't need that much. You never did. You were just convinced you do. You were convinced that more is better, that enough is never enough, that stopping is failing. And as long as you believe this, you'll keep accumulating, you'll keep running, you'll keep feeling empty even with everything full around you, because the emptiness isn't in the lack of things. The emptiness is in the absence of meaning. And meaning doesn't come from outside. Meaning isn't something you buy, achieve, or accumulate. Meaning is something you discover when you stop running, when you look inside, when you allow silence to show you who you really are without all the layers, without all the distractions, without all the excess. Maybe you'll discover it's simpler than it seems. Maybe you'll discover the life you want is much smaller than the life you're trying to build. Maybe you'll discover that happiness isn't conquest, isn't accumulation, isn't quantity. Maybe you'll discover that happiness is knowing what is enough and having the courage to live with it. And this might sound like a cliche, but it carries a deep truth. Freedom isn't in having everything. Freedom is in not needing anything to be who you are. It's in knowing you're already complete, already sufficient, already whole, regardless of how much you have or don't have. And when you understand this, really understand it, something changes. You stop accumulating out of fear. You stop running out of insecurity. You stop running from yourself. Thoreau wrote that he went to the woods because he wanted to live deliberately. He wanted to face only the essential facts of life. He didn't want to discover at the hour of death that he had not lived. And this is the question that remains. Are you living or just existing? Are you present or just passing through? Are you choosing your life or just reacting to what others expect from you? Because the difference between these things is huge, and you only realize the difference when you stop, when you slow down, when you create space, when you let go of what you don't need and stay only with what matters. And what matters is so little, it's so simple, but we complicate it because we're afraid of simplicity. We're afraid to discover that the life we really want doesn't require so much effort, so much sacrifice, so much accumulation. We're afraid to discover we can be happy with less, because if we can be happy with less, then everything we've accumulated until now was in vain. And admitting that hurts, but maybe that's exactly the pain you need to feel. Maybe it's this pain that will free you, because as long as you keep believing you need everything you have, you'll stay trapped. As long as you keep thinking that letting go is losing, you'll keep carrying unnecessary weight. As long as you keep running from silence, you'll stay anesthetized, living a life that isn't yours, chasing goals that don't belong to you, accumulating things that don't make you feel alive. And when you finally understand this, when you finally have the courage to look at your life with honesty and admit what needs to change, you realize that freedom was always available. You just couldn't see it because you were too busy accumulating. It's time for us to leave some things behind. It's time to stop carrying the weight of expectations that aren't ours, of goals that don't belong to us, of things that no longer serve us. It's time to realize that accumulation doesn't protect you. It traps you. It distances you from who you really are. And if you want to live a life that makes sense, that's truly yours, you need to have the courage to let go. You need to have the courage to say no. You need to have the courage to live with less and discover that less can be infinitely more. Because in the end, what you take with you isn't the things you accumulated. It's who you became in the process. It's how much you truly lived. It's how much you allowed yourself to be whole, present, alive. So answer for yourself with complete honesty. Why do you accumulate what you don't need? Is it fear? Is it comparison? Is it escape? Is it because you think you should? Is it because everyone's doing it? Is it because you don't know who you'd be without all this? Whatever the answer is, it tells you something important about yourself. It shows you where you're trapped. And realizing where you're trapped is the first step to freeing yourself. There's no path without pain, but you choose which pain to carry. The pain of continuing to accumulate, flee, perform, or the pain of stopping, letting go, and starting to live deliberately. Why do we accumulate what we don't need? Because we're afraid. Afraid of lacking, afraid of emptiness, afraid of discovering we're sufficient without needing to prove anything. We accumulate because we confuse security with excess. Because we confuse identity with property. Because we were taught that more is always better. But the truth is that accumulation doesn't fill anything. It only postpones the meeting with what really matters. As long as you keep accumulating, you'll keep running from yourself, trapped in a life that isn't yours. The answer isn't in having more. It's in needing less, in knowing what is enough, and having the courage to live with it. If this video made you think, if it bothered you in some way, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And comment down below, what are you holding on to that you should have let go of already? Let's talk about it.